Yesterday we were learning about wet clothing and hanging them up, using a dryer before Shabbos, hanging up the clothes on Shabbos. You're not allowed to because Marisayan. But we learned that the problem with the dryer, putting clothes in a dryer right before Shabbos, is a problem. It's called afshemilsa. It makes a lot of noise, and therefore, as Poskim writes, Shnorch says it's not in the spirit of Shabbos. So basically, any appliance that makes noise, you're not allowed to put on, even though you're putting it on before Shabbos. Now, another thing, they don't have too much you can have this a heater. Well, in New York, they have something called radiators. So when clothes would get wet, a lot of people would drape them over the radiator, because radiators were hot, or a heater for that matter, right? And then the clothing would dry. So on Shabbos, you have to be extremely careful, because if you put a wet garment, over a heater, and it gets more than 110 degrees, which is not hot, by the way. 110 degrees is called Yatzaledis Bais, then you're ending up halachically cooking the water that's in the cloth that you hung over. So halacha is warned to discuss this in contemporary halacha, in Shchonoch it says you can't hang dry clothing near a fire if no matter how long you leave it there, it's going to become the water would get very hot, and then it's considered cooked on Shabbos. Because cooked liquid is 110 degrees, so it's not a very high temperature. Cooking is 212. This is 110 degrees. It's like half of it would be considered cooking. So you have to be careful not to put anything in a place where it might, in a hot area where it could come yatzuledis.
The radiator itself, if you control the radiator, if you turn on before Shabbos, you're heating up the water later, the same water that's in the clothes.
Yeah, but again, the water that's in the radiator, you put on before Shabbos. You're right, you can't turn on a radiator on Shabbos.
Right.
You can have a guy do it, because the Gemara says everybody is considered sick when it comes to cold. So therefore, if it's a cold room, you're allowed to, on Shabbos, you can call in a guy, tell him directly, turn on the heat. Because the Gemara says everybody has it in. But you can't turn on a radiator, a Jew can't turn on a radiator on Shabbos. Radiator.
But you can put the pants on before Shabbos?
If you put them on before Shabbos and the radiator is already hot, see, the problem is like this. On Shabbos, especially when it comes to bishul, bishul means cooking.
I know, but what is boiling,
turning anything, making.
Vapor.
Do you want to wait a minute? Making anything, especially liquid, hot, is called cooking on Shabbos. Yeah, yes. Cooking is changing or a liquid, making it hot 110 degrees, which I told you is not that hot, is considered halachic cooking on Shabbos. So somebody will say like this, okay, if I leave it there 3 hours, it would come to Yatzaledis, but it will come to 110. But I'm going to leave it there for 3 hours. I'm going to leave it there for 1 hour, half an hour. So, and I'm going to take it away. So therefore it will just, warm up a little bit, but it will never come to be hot. So Shchonoch says clearly in Hilchos Bishul that you're not allowed to put something near a fire that if you leave it there for a very long time, it will get cooked. You're not allowed to even leave it there for a minute. Why? You might put it there and you might forget it there, and then you're going to come to cooking on Shabbos. So it's a Takanas Chacham, you're not allowed to put something. So you can't say, okay, the radiator, if it's there for an hour, will heat up the garment, the water in the garment. But I'm not going to leave it there for an hour, I'm going to leave it 10 minutes. Halachically, you couldn't do that. So you have to be careful when you hang up clothes to dry. It's not on a clothesline, it's not in a normal place where people hang clothing to dry. And you can't put it over a hot pot or anything like that, because it will come to bishul, will come to cooking. Now, halacha also says, you're not allowed, what?
So if you have hand towels in your kitchen, and so you can hang it on the handle of your oven that's on for Shabbos.
If even leaving it there for a long time, it will get to 110 degrees. You're not allowed to. even though you're gonna be there for 5 minutes. What?
Are you able to hang the clothes on a line indoor, not outside, inside the house, when the entire house has a heater going on, so it's not gonna go up, it'll dry the clothes?
Again, we learned that you can't hang clothing in any place where you normally hang clothing to. So if you have a clothesline in the house, or they used to have those, they probably still have them, those wooden things, they fold up, open them up and you hang clothes on, they're made to dry, right? So you're not allowed to hang wet clothes on there on Shabbos anyway, because people will think that you washed them on Shabbos.
In your own backyard, Rabbi?
Also not. Anything which is also Marasayan, especially if it's Minateras, also even Mechadr Chadorim, even the most inner rooms, you're not allowed to do it. So you wouldn't be able to do it like that. Halacha also says, what happens if I have a bucket of water? Years ago they used to do it, and they would put a cloth over the bucket to make sure no dirt falls in or something like that. So it says in halacha you're not allowed to do that either on Shabbos. Before Shabbos you can do it. On Shabbos you can do it. Why? Because maybe the cloth will fall in, and then you come to wring it out, and again, it's going to get, the problem is not that it falls in, because that's accidental, you didn't do it. But once it's in, you're going to take it out, and say, and you're going to forget the Shabbos, and you're going to wring it out. So, in fact, halacha says also, you're not allowed to walk near a body of water where it's very prone that you're going to fall in on Shabbos. Huh?
That's good sense.
Yeah, well,
Hopefully not.
even if it's not that deep, let's say. You're right. I mean, halachically, by the way, not in these dinim, but there's a whole, in Cheshmish, but Vaad Rabbonim also has those dinim, what's called Shmira Saguf. In health things, you're not allowed to walk under a shaky ladder. You're not allowed to walk on a shaky bridge. Not today's bridges. They used to make this little, they were very shaky. It's anything dangerous you're not allowed to do. It's biblical, by the way, it's biblically forbidden for somebody to put himself into a dangerous situation.
It's not only Shabbos.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. He's saying not only on Shabbos. Okay, now, yeah.
All these rules, it includes into the Shloshah Regalim.
Yeah, all these dinim apply to Yom Tov also. And Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, yeah. Yeah.
Not all the cooking.
No, not cooking. But you can't cook on Yom Tov for things that you're not going to eat.
Yeah.
So if you hang up your clothes to dry,
It's not going to eat it.
and you're going to cook it, I mean, you have to let it, but you can't do it on Yom Tov either. You can only cook for eating. It's not to cook to dry your clothing. Yeah, it would apply to all the Yom Tovim also. There's no difference with that.
So walking on the beach on Shabbos.
No, walking on the beach is not you're not going to fall in. Why should somebody fall in? If you're walking on a cliff, huh? It depends where you're walking. You're right. If somebody wants to walk on the beach, there's a lot of issues. Number one, you're carrying the water.
If it wets your clothes, you mean?
If you are, I'll give you a simple, practical example. Let's say somebody goes to the mikveh on Shabbos in a lake. Okay? So let's say, forget about people watching. You take off your clothes, you walk into the water. Okay? Now, in order to immerse, the water, the first few feet are not deep. Correct? You have to walk, maybe let's say, for argument's sake, 7 feet into the water. Correct? And then you dunk, and then you walk back. The problem is, you're carrying that water on you. So halacha says there's a very big problem taving in the lake. Now, if a lake is inside a private domain, like a swimming pool, then it's not an issue. But then you can't carry water. So if somebody wants to go on Shabbos to walk into the water, they can't walk, even if the yam is a carmelist, whatever, it's too complicated to get into now. But if you can't walk more than 6 feet, more than Dalet Amos, even in the carmelist, you can't carry. Yeah, but that's b'diavad, that's l'chatchila.
Changing the form of the sand, is it muktzah?
Changing the form of the sand is not a problem.
The sand with your finger.
If your feet are wet, you're allowed to walk on sand. But to take water with your hands and put it into the sand is the biblical malacha of lush, of kneading. Kneading dough. What do you take flour? You add water, okay, and then you knead the dough, right? So the concept of kneading is taking individual particles and putting it together. So it's mashal to build a sand castle on Shabbos. Okay? So you have a few things. If you have a playground that has a sandbox, so the sand is not muktzah. Because the sand was designated before Shabbos to play in. Sand normally is muktzah. Okay, that's clear. Sand is muktzah. But muktzah that you designate before Shabbos to use, so then it's not muktzah. If you designate it permanently. So sand in a sandbox is not muktzah. But if you pour water in, you make a sand castle. So what do you take water and so number one, you're doing lush, you're kneading, K-N-E-A-D, and then you're doing bona. Now, even though it's a temporary building, it's not, your sand castle is not going to last a long time, but it's midrabanan forbidden. It's because a temporary building is also forbidden. So on the sandbox, you don't have muktzah, but you have the other two issues. So what?
Walking on the beach barefoot, you're carrying the sand on your feet.
That's not called carrying. It's not, I know it's different than the water. What?
If you don't use hot water or cooking only for eating, you could also use it for washing.
Yeah, but that is the kneading for your body to be clean.
I'm saying if you could use it.
But 1 second, you're not listening. Washing your hands with warm water is tzarech for your body. What is a tzarech to dry your clothes to make them hot? So that's just forbidden.